Okay, so welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a recap of The Passage Season 1, Episode 1. Okay, so the show opens with this, oh my gosh, she's so adorable. This little girl named Amy Bellafonte. She's clearly in a car and she looks terrified. And so then they go into the story of how everything started. It was about these doctors. They worked for the CDC. They were looking for this. They were in search of some, I don't know, plant. I don't know what they were looking for, but the purpose of it was to. Their goal is to be able to develop some medication or formula, something that is like the cure of all ails, right? So they're trekking through the woods and they come to this cave, and they go into this cave and they have this guy who has this man locked in the cage, and this guy in the cage is like he's not human anymore. And so people were saying that he was a vampire. And so one of the doctors, of course, got upset, like, okay, you can't do that, you can't have people locked in the cage, lets the man out. He ends up getting attacked. And I guess for all intents and purposes, the other doctor, the friend thought that he was dead, so they were in the hospital. Then his friend his friend is walking up to him, and he's looking at him, and he does not look well, obviously. And he has this bandage on his neck where the guy that gave had bitten him, and he took it off, and he was like, okay, and and then he started bleeding, and it just started spiraled off from there. And so then you flash to Brad Wolgast, and I guess that was his partner. I can't remember his name. So they're in a prison, and they're talking to one of the inmates about this trial. And I guess if people who get involved in this trial, I don't know if it is early release or if it's knocked some time off their sentence, whatever the case may be. So he's trying to sell this prisoner on getting involved in this basically experiment or whatever. And so he talks to him, and he starts telling him about other prisoners who got involved in it, and how they're doing fine. And so the prisoner eventually decides to go ahead and get involved in the trial. And so they end up, they get there. So, okay, after that, and back a little bit. So then you have Dr. Sykes. So she's giving a talk. This is all doctors about some outbreak that's happening in Asia of some type of flu it's going to turn into an epidemic, and then it can hit the United States in a couple of months if it's not controlled. And so now, they're ramping up their search for this cure, this cure-all. And so they go, one of the doctors had an idea. So they go down and they see all the prisoners. So all of the people that Brad Wolgast named as people who were involved in this trial and were now doing fine are still locked in this facility, and they're just fucked up. So they look like zombie. I mean, they look what you would think of zombie. That's what they look like. And except for this one, and it's a woman, and for whatever reason I can't. The name of the character escapes me, but she's just sitting in her cell, looking just as normal as can be, blonde hair, blue eyed, and so of all of the patients, she seems to be the one faring better. And so what they're saying is, it could possibly have something to do with her age. I don't know if she was the youngest person in the experiment. And so now they come up with the idea that maybe because children have more neurons than adults, that they want to go even younger. And in comes Amy Bellafonte. So Amy is kind of a latchkey kid, her mom, you find out that her mom is on drugs, and she's it's just a fucked up situation. And so she's, it's late, and she's at a cafe, and the lady was like, the cafe's closing. She asked her about her mom. She said, oh, my mom, she's telling them, oh, my mom works late. It's fine. So she leaves, and she heads on home. And then she see all these police lights and police cars, and her mom died of a drug overdose. So now, of course, she goes into the system. So around this time, you see Brad and his partner. They show up with the prisoner, and so they hand him off. And then the guy, oh my God, what is his name? Richard Clark, who was also a friend of Brad. They served. They were in the military together. He hands him another file, and it's a file. He looks at the file, and it's a file for them to pick up Amy Bellafonte. So that's who they've decided is going to be their test case, this younger person. So at this point, Amy is in a foster care home. A group home. I guess that's would be the best way to describe it. It's a group home. And she didn't get into a fight with somebody up at the home, and the next you know, the lady comes out and says, some guys are here to see you. So she go in, and it's Brad Wolgast and his partner. So they try to sell her some cockamamie story about how her mom may have been infected by something, and she's like, my mother was a crackhead. Damn it, she's like, she was about that shit stuff. She's there like but he's working. He's like, yeah, we think that she may have been exposed to something, and we want you to come with us to this facility so they can run some tests just to make sure that you're okay. And so she's like, So, and then the woman didn't even bat an eye. She was like, okay, go pack your bags and go with the men. Go pack your bags and go with the men. But, you know, then that's the system. You know, and then she even asked them to be reimbursed for the food that she gave the girl, the baby. So it's like, they looked at her, and I think one of the guys even said, are you serious? So Amy goes on upstairs and packs her bags. And what does Amy do? Amy was like, fuck that shit. She jumps her ass out the window and make a run for it. So Amy is very street smart, okay? So they see her making a run for it, and of course they, go after her. They get into the car and take off and end up catching up with her. And of course she's making such a scene, and it's, now they have all these prying eyes trying to figure out, okay, you have these two white guys, this little black girl who's screaming, right? And so the partner ends up hitting her. And it's like, oh shit! So he throws her over his shoulder and puts her in the car. And so Brad, he's behind the wheel, so he speeds off until he feels like they're at a safe distance, and then he slams on the brakes. The guy's face bounced off the dashboard. I think he hit the dashboard, and he basically threatened him like, "Don't you ever hit her again?" He was so goddamn pissed. So then he gets out and goes around and he talks to Amy to make sure that she's okay, and he apologizes and the whole thing, and he ends up calling the office and letting them know that things didn't go as planned. There were a lot of witnesses, and so yeah, we're gonna have to leave her somewhere. We're not gonna be able to do this. And so the guy was basically like, just do what you're supposed to do, just change cars, whatever you need to do, just basically get her here. So they really want her. Now, at this point, it's like, what makes Amy so special over all these other children that are in the system? So it's like, okay, what's so special about her? So so they end up so they're on the road, and she's getting car sick. So they end up having to pull over, and she gets sick, and he's, Brad is being very comforting and, just trying to help her. And so he asked his partner to go to get her some ginger ale and crackers and all that just to settle her stomach. And so while the partner goes to get the stuff, he's sitting talking to her. But she really wasn't all that into having a conversation with him. And she was holding some book, A Wrinkle in Time, and they were basically just talking. He's trying to bond with her, put her at ease, right? And so the friend walks up. He has the stuff. They get back in the car, and then as they're riding, they see that there is a carnival. And actually, let's backtrack. So while this is going on, they flash to the facility, and they have the doctors who are kind of watching the patients. And you have this one guy, Clark, Brad's friend, who's looking at the woman who seems to be the younger, seems to be faring better. She, like I said, she looks normal, and it's like he's like in the daze, like she locks eyes with you, and like you can't break away. And so the other doctor, I can't remember the name. The other doctor who was in the cave, So there was Dr. Fanning, which was just the one who was bitten, and I think Dr. Sykes is the woman. I forget what the doctor's name is. I could be getting these people mixed up, but we'll figure this out as things go progress. But anyway, so he's actually standing looking at his friend, and so one of the guys walked up and says that he's been having dreams about him, all he wants to do is go home, and da 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 da. And so you're getting the feel that they're able to kind of get into whatever this drug is that they're giving these people. They have this, they're able to get inside anyone's mind, I guess. And so, which is why I think why he was such in the daze, the guy Clark who was staring at the blonde hair, blue eye, he couldn't, like, it was almost like he couldn't walk away. And so, while this is going on, Brad and they're back on the road. And she's on his tablet. So, and so she gets, a text pops up. And so she's like, oh, you just got a text. And so he's like, why are you reading my text? She's like, well, it just popped up. And he's like, well, what's it say? He says, she's like, it's from your ex-wife. And so the guy, the party's like, you have an ex-wife? And so she was so funny. She was like, what other kind of wife would he have? Like, he's such a fun, like, who could stay married to him, right? So, she started asking him questions, and as they were driving, he noticed that there was a carnival. And so he decided he was going to take her to the carnival. And so, of course, the partner, they get there, and he gets out the car and starts talking to him like, are you crazy? Like, he basically was like, she's cargo. She's not, like, he doesn't see them as people. And so Brad was basically like, you know what, I got this. We'll meet back in an hour or whatever. So I'm just going to take her in here. It's going to be whatever. So they go in, and they go to the booth where you have to shoot the whatever, like the ducks or the birds or whatever that's going by, to win a stuffed animal. And she wanted this huge unicorn. So he ends up taking a shot. He ends up showing her how to shoot. And while she's over there trying to win this thing, he ends up returning his ex-wife's call. And you find out that he and his wife lost a child. And he has a lot of guilt about that. And so now you can see why he's having he's has such an attachment to this kid. She's probably around the same age that his daughter was when she died. And she basically just wants him to come home, and how, she doesn't blame him, and that she's going to do everything she wants him to come back. And he just feels like he just can't right now. And so they end up hanging up. And around this time, he turns around, he walks over, and now she's walking over with this huge unicorn. He was just like, oh my God, it's an eyesore. And she was like, oh, it's cool. What are you talking about? So the partner ends up showing up, and they decided, okay, before they get back in the car, they're gonna hit the bathroom. So the partner goes in first, and then after sitting there thinking about it for a minute, he tells Amy, wait right here for me. So he goes into the bathroom, and he chokes this shit out of his partner. He didn't kill him, he just choked him out. So he choked him just long enough for him to pass out. So now he's decided that he's not going to take her to this facility. Now, if you go back, when they initially dropped the prisoner off, his partner asked, what do you think happens here? And Brad was basically like, once we dropped him off, that's the end of our job, and I just don't get into the rest of it. I don't know, and I don't answer any questions. But for some reason, in this sense, he knew that it was a bad place. All of a sudden now becomes a bad place. And so he doesn't want to take her there. He's grown attached to this kid. So he obviously gets this free. He wants to just incapacitate him, trying to kill him, to get him out of the way. And then they make a run for it. And so he ends up, he goes into, so the head officer, obviously the man, when he comes to, he calls the head officer to let them know. And so now the goal is to get Brad. But Brad has all this specialized training because he was in the military, and so now they're like, okay, it's going to be hard to catch him. And so Brad decides to stop by this river, and she was like, but she's asleep when he wakes her up, and she's trying to figure out why they're there. And he said, I want you to, because your mother didn't have a service, I want you to now, say whatever it is you need to say. She's like, what am I supposed to do? And he's basically like, he wants her to get out whatever hurt and anger or that she has to her mom. Because she, when the previous conversation they had, she was very angry. She was basically like, she was a crackhead, she was a junkie. And so she starts talking. He was like, just talk about some of the good things that you remember about her. And so she starts talking, and of course she becomes emotional, and she cries it out, and he embraces her in this moment. They have a moment. And so they head to they flash to the prisoner that they dropped off. So now he's in an examining room, and so Dr. Fanning, who is the one who's fucked up, he walks into the room. And you're kind of left like, okay, what? Did they cure him? What's going on here? And so he starts talking to the guy and taking his vitals and saying that he's the perfect candidate. He's perfectly healthy. And the guy, and he asked him if he had any questions. He said, yeah, you never told me your name. And so that's when they fan up and you see his face. They say, I'm Dr. Fanning. And he starts talking to him, and then he said, you have blood in you're bleeding from your mouth. He said, oh, isn't that embarrassing? And then there's this whole moment, then you realize that he's dreaming. So this doctor has now got inside this man's head. And now the man is kind of, obviously you can see his face. He's like, what the hell did I just get myself into? So around this time, he pulls up to a convenience store, and he's getting snacks for them. And so that's when he sees that his face is plastered all over the news. He's now being labeled as a kidnapper. He's now kidnapped this kid. So he goes to the car, and he was going to pull off, but then he looks behind him and he sees a sheriff's car behind him. So he's like, okay. He's trying to think about the more reasonable way out of the situation. So he decides he's going to turn himself in. There's going to turn into a whole media thing so that she can get the coverage that she needs, because he feels like if she's public, then they can't do anything to her. So he turns himself in. So next they're sitting in the police station, and he says to him, well, where's the media? And he said, well, they're on their way. And so the receptionist at the police station is like, oh, there's somebody from DOD on the phone for you. And so that's when Brad knew that he was in trouble, like, oh shit. So I'm like, why didn't you call the media and make it the situation? Why did you? That's one thing I didn't get. Like, I would have called the media, and I would have had them take me into custody on the news instead of just walking up to some random officer and turning myself in. So that's why I didn't get that, Brad. Okay. Anywho, so now he realizes they're in trouble. So the sheriff goes into his office to take the phone call, and he tells her to tell Amy to go behind the counter to get the keys so he can get the cuffs off, because they have him cuffed to the bench. And so around this time, she gets the keys, he gets the cuffs off. The officer runs out because he sees he's trying to get away. He pulls the gun. You look outside. That's when all the guys from this facility pulls up, even his friend Clark, who handed him the file. And so he was trying to tell these sheriff, like, we need to get out of here. Like, your life is in danger too. Like, they're not going to leave any witnesses. That was basically his thing. But the sheriff was like, mm-mm. So he ends up getting the gun from him, and the sheriff, he's walking out, and of course the sheriff is like, he's here, and they end up shooting and killing him. So now it's a whole shootout in this police station, and of course it came down to Brad and his friend Clark, and so something exploded or something. It was a distraction long enough for Brad to get away, but the friend ended up shooting him. I guess he grazed him on the side of something, but they get out, they get in the car, and they're hitting it down the road in this cruiser with the people hot on their heels. And that's when you see Amy's facial expression, which is what you saw in the beginning. That's what you were seeing in the beginning, them fleeing for their lives. So that's why she looked so terrified. And he basically told her that he was fine and that everything was going to be okay and that he's not going to leave her. And to put her at ease, and they just basically getting it down the road. And that's how the episode ended. So it's still unclear at this point why they are so set on Amy and what's so special about her. But I like the show. I like the two of them together. They are she is too cute. And of course Mark Gosselaar is a long way from this a long long way from Zach Morris. So if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, then you know about Saved by the Bell. So he looks good. He looks good. So yeah, that's how the episode ended, and I am going to leave this here, and I will see you guys in the next video.